Welcome back. It's time to dive into the latest Titan lore. The Titans aren't what we thought, and the Pantheon isn't as united as they would have us believe. There is potential for a future Titan-on-Titan clash. Now, in a way, we've always known that something was up here, and that maybe Aman'Thul wasn't all he was cracked up to be, and that's because all the way back in Cataclysm, Morozond said this: "Aman'Thul, you know not what you have done." Certainly begs the question, what has Aman'Thul done? What did he set into motion? Ultimately, I think what Morozond saw was the end of the one true timeline. Essentially, all of Aman'Thul's plans coming to fruition, and he didn't like it. And now in-game, we're finding that his decisions led to some tension that may explode again when Iridikron forces them to return to the story. Look just how far we've came in the last few months. Dwarves in Khaz-Algar, heretics who opposed Odin in Avalorn, a whole side of Azeroth unpoliced by Titan Keepers. That's all stuff pointing, of course, to the next expansion, which, at the very least, will have a strong Titan undercurrent. Beyond that, sides may shatter, divided between true, pure order and the natural chaos that is life. Today, we've got the biggest stuff coming to Warcraft. Elune and Aenar's ancient world tree, Alexstrasza and Chromie breaking the ordering of Azeroth, then Tyr and Odin potentially even coming to blows for the destiny of our world soul. And for today's sponsor. War Thunder is the most comprehensive vehicle combat game ever made. It's insane. Between tanks, planes, ships, helicopters, they've got over 2,000 vehicles that span over 100 years of history. I'm a massive history nut. I grew up on Band of Brothers, A Bridge Too Far, and a whole bunch more. I've always loved historical military settings in games, and War Thunder's stunning graphics, especially cracked to 4K, and sound design make it such an immersive experience, and that even extends to the gameplay. They model everything down to the detail, and it's not just the visuals of the vehicles. Their damage simulation is extremely intricate, highlighted by their damage X-ray feature that is just so satisfying to watch. It's so much more fun than just a big HP bar damage sponge. War Thunder really is a hell of a time to play, and it's actually free with crossplay on PlayStation, Xbox, and PC. You can join up today with my link for a huge bonus pack with 100,000 silver lions, 50% XP and silver booster, 7 days of premium, an M4A2 Sherman, and P40E-1 rental with 10 backups each to launch you into the action. Click the link down below. The next steps in Dragonflight's story take us to the Eye of Ysera. This is a location in the Dream that we've known about since Warcraft 3. A realm said to have been created by the Titans, but in reality, we're finding out it existed before they arrived. Previously, I discussed the Legend of Erinithria. Today, I'm going to discuss the other two books we found. In On the Nature of the Dream, what we long suspected is confirmed, that the Dream, as we know it, was not created by the Titans. Rather, it was cordoned off and ordered. The final book, then, is about Aenar and Elune working together to plant a world tree. The first on Azeroth, and within that, we see evidence of the first Titan fracture. It's the story of a much more ancient world tree, retold just before the defense of Yggdrasil. And it begins with the Black Empire consuming Azeroth, when Agrimar, the Titan who also discovered the world of Draenor, found her. He then told the Titans who came to Azeroth's defense, and this is where we learn some new information. Seeking to bring hope and healing, Aenar brought a gift given to her by Elune, a branch of Gehanir, the mother tree of the Emerald Dream, the whole Emerald Dream. And the way that it's described, Aenar and Elune shared a deep bond long before the Titans got to Azeroth. So, Aenar carried this branch with her to Azeroth, reaching down to the world she planted the branch. And with that, the roots of Elune here, named after her great love, took hold. This swiftly grew. Its roots sprawled across the land, and where they reached, new life flourished. Seeing this, Aman'Thul was furious. To him, this was not order, this was wild growth. It was uncontrolled, uncontained, and so he reached down through the sky and tore Elune here from the planet, just like he did with the old god Y'Sharj. Aenar cried, her tears falling back to where the tree had taken root. It transpired that while the tree itself was gone, its roots yet lived. Nourished by her tears, they held on. The Titans then had to leave, but just before they did, Aenar left instructions with her keeper, Freya. This is a charge that would of course later be somewhat shared by the Green Dragons. It's quite a story. We don't know how much is analogy, but you can see this all as being an account of what actually happened. We do know from this that Aenar believed the best way to fight off the Black Empire was with the influence of life, by planting a world tree and letting a connection to the Emerald Dream take root deep in the planet, one that Freya would of course form more fully. But Aman'Thul clearly disagreed. Amongst all the Titan projects, Azeroth's is by far the most important to him, so to Aman'Thul, this was a risk that he could and would not accept. That his actions brought Aenar to tears are relevant. This meant that she resented him to the point where, when she saw that some of the roots still lived, she did not tell him, and then she, in secret, gave Freya instructions. All of this means then that exactly what we see in Azeroth is not necessarily Aman'Thul's plan. We also learn, of course, that Aenar has a connection to Elune, her great love, one whose influence Aman'Thul almost certainly would disapprove of. Of course, we already knew there was a connection between these two characters. In Antorus, where do we find Aenar went and hid? In a world called Elunaria, clearly named after Elune. And then, of course, the Tears of Elune was the Titan Pillar of Creation in the Legion expansion that was associated with Aenar, but of course was named after Elune. Getting to the core issue, where Elune and Aenar see beauty and potential, Aman'Thul sees risk. And that's something you should keep in mind, especially as these characters may return. After all, what Iridikron says is he's going to basically force the Titan's hand and force them to come out of whatever they're doing, with Sargeras locked away, and journey back to the world where he, of course, thinking he's a pretty cool dude, will be able to defeat them. And look, there's loads I could dive into here about the Emerald Dream, maybe speculating, are the roots of Eluna here actually, are they underneath us right now? Are they on the other side of Azeroth? But today, we're talking about Titans, and here we see Aman'Thul and Aenar disagreeing hardcore on some of the most fundamental stuff. But that divide can't be that big, right? I mean, not an actual civil war. They clearly didn't come to blows, and the last time we saw them, they were, of course, working together. Well, let's check in with the Titan servants in Azeroth, because right now we see that they are breaking the timeline, letting life run rampant, maybe even using some void magic. So when Aman'Thul does return, he's really not going to be happy, and in that case, core characters like Alexstrasza and Tyr will have to ask what side they're on. In this expansion, the Aspects returned to the Isles, and when they did, their first objective was restoring the Oath Stones. These are literal symbols of the oath they made with the Titans. Note, an oath with the Titans, not an oath with the world or an oath to some greater ideal, an oath to the Titans. Now, Neltharion's Oathstone was shattered during the War of the Ancients, and the rest went dormant when the Aspects gave up their power in the Cataclysm. And while these Oathstones seem wishy-washy, I think we can all assume that they have some sort of connection. I don't know if they're perhaps a conduit of some Titan power, but, they probably do something. Now, the Bronze Dragons believe that restoring them is the best way for the dragons to reclaim their position as the guardians of Azeroth. And you can see the logic, right? They give up their powers, the Oathstones go dormant, they want their powers back, okay, let's turn them on again. But of course, that doesn't actually work. I mean, look what happens when we do a bunch of Oathstone restoring, then Alexstrasza goes to the Mother Oathstone, and guess what? It doesn't work. And in a way, they've been breaking their oath all over the place. From launch, Chromie has been talking about doing whatever it takes to save Nosdormu, even if it means altering the one true timeline. Now, this one true timeline is the timeline demanded by Aman'Thul. Aman'Thul is the Titan with the gift, essentially, of seeing time. And this one true timeline is the future that he wants to happen, the one where he wins, where Azeroth is ordered. The problem for Aman'Thul, though, is that some Bronze Dragons are willing to break that oath. They are willing to bend the rules in a way that will not lead to his timeline taking place. Of course, I'm talking about Chromie. Chromie is completely unwilling to accept Nosdormu's fall. even so much that she is willing to break the timeline, to move us away from the very thing that her entire flight swore they would uphold. Now, in this dungeon, she essentially has two options. Number one, she can stop Iridikron and let Nosdormu turn into Morozond. This quite clearly is the one true timeline, because clearly in this timeline, one of the things that happens is Nosdormu turns to Morozond, right? That's just a cost. Or, of course, she could let Iridikron escape, but save Nosdormu in the process, which is exactly what she did. And by going with that latter path, she forced us into a different timeline, right? Events are not going to happen as Aman'Thul said they would. This is a path that leads away from what Aman'Thul wants, and that means when he comes back, he will be angry. Let's go up this chain then. So, Alexstrasza, she is having pretty major doubts. I mean, yes, there's imprisoning and then forgetting about the incarnates for like 25,000 years, or whatever that was, pretty much tormenting them, but also what the aspects did, or allowed to happen, to the eggs, where they essentially let the eggs be infused with Tyr's Order magic. And Alexstrasza knows this was wrong morally, because the dragons in the eggs weren't given a choice. They were changed as eggs, and worse, when some of Dragonkind just was really angry about this and refused to let it happen, they were killed and imprisoned. Of course, now things have changed. We're on the verge of there being a sixth sort of dragonflight, one led by Virinov, one of those rebels, one set on defying the Titan's mandate and who respects, really, Azeroth as she naturally is, including her elements. Of course, look at the incarnates, what do you see? Lots of elemental stuff. And that's actually kind of important, because the elements with their constant strife, they actually weren't really fitting into the Titans' plan, and that's why the Titans imprisoned them within the elemental planes. That's why, say, Ragnaros, whenever he was defeated in Classic, went back to the Firelands. I mention the elements not just because Farak is full of fire and Smolderon the Firelord appears in the next patch, but they actually go back to the core of what the Titans changed. You see, Azeroth naturally consumed the element of spirit, the elements were all in strife in the planet, and basically this was not fitting the Titans' plan. So what they did is they imprisoned them within the elemental planes. Now, of course, we have this rebel dragon who you could say is allied with or sympathetic to the elements, actually having a voice at the seat of the aspects. Does that mean then that we should actually worry about Tyr? Because look at it from his perspective. We had the Bronze Dragonflights just go and break the true timeline, so that's kind of like strike one. We've got one of the rebels being like on their, kind of in their power structure. That's strike two. I mean, we've really went against quite a lot. And we've also very much came down on things that he was involved in doing, like infusing those eggs with order. So he could very much look around and decide we've all went rather mad. But Tyr is a character with thoughts, agency, all of those things. One of the things about him is he always had an affection for mortals. That's kind of what it comes down to. Now, it's kind of interesting because if you look at a page from the new Emerald Dream book, we see the author wonder, and I'll just quote it here. If we dragons see it, then it can only mean we are touched, not just by life and order, but by other forces as well. And the idea that we're more the sum of our parts to the likes of, say, Odin and Aman'Thul kind of means we're dangerous and we can't be controlled. Yet, with Tyr, while I think he would think that by default, he is a character who's interacted with more of us, and by his actions has kind of proven a degree of valor, of empathy, of understanding. So really, versus any other big Titan-like being, he's the one that would understand us. So, whenever Tyr is back up and running, which is almost certainly going to happen in patch 10.2, I think we can count him on our side. So far, so good then. We've got Elune and Aenar likely being allies. We've got Tyr and the dragon aspects, including Virinov. Then there's even the Keeper Freya, who of course was committed to protecting that area where the first world tree stood, and to helping those roots kind of grow, and, as well as doing all the things she did with the Emerald Dream. Then, of course, we've got the many factions of us, adventurers, heroes of the world. But that doesn't mean we'll have it easy, because on the other side of this equation here is Aman'Thul and his lackey in Azeroth, the Keeper Odin. Odin is absolutely key to us understanding what went on at the other side of Azeroth, because it's clearly something that before he was imprisoned up in the halls of Valor by Halia doing a bit of trickery, is something he was very much concerned about. And obviously, whenever Big Daddy Abenthul comes back, I think we know that Odin is going to be on his side. Odin, of course, disagreed with loads of things that I suppose Tyr would end up doing or supporting, so I imagine Odin will be a little bit of a snitch to his Allfather. Okay, so Odin sent expeditions to this place called Avalorn to bring its people to justice, right? We know this from a lore tome that we found at the start of this expansion. And even though we are missing huge chunks of context, we're missing some names of the places or peoples that we may seek at the other side of the world, there is one thing that did stand out, and that is Inaria. Inaria was a Titan Keeper, and according to the tomes, crimes were committed against her and other Titan Keepers by the heretics of Avalorn. That is why Tyr wanted to bring them to justice. But digging into why these people may be called heretics in this book kind of brings us back to a possibility. What if they are not worshipping old gods, but instead are heretics who like life? In Odin's edicts, he called life chaos, something that must be controlled. And going back to Inaria, well, the only Titan with female keepers seems to be Aenar, and with the way that things are shaping up, Inaria sounds like a keeper who maybe more fell in line with Aman'Thul and subsequently Odin's vision of life on Azeroth, controlling life, binding it, as of course Aenar's title would suggest. If you disagree with this, you are a heretic, and seemingly Inaria was killed by these heretics. And I suppose I'm going to end up saying heretic so much you might even think this is a Warhammer 40k video, because of course Chromie, absolutely a heretic. Tyr, if he ends up siding a bit more with us, heretic. Alexstrasza and the other dragons, well now, they kind of are heretics with how they've changed some of their positions throughout this expansion. That means there's a bit of a reckoning coming. So when we go to Avalorn, I think we're going to have a lot more sympathy for these heretics than Odin would. We only know about them through a message from Odin where he said they were evil. Now, because of course today I've talked about a whole bunch of life-related things, well, I think we can consider then the possibility that Elune here was planted on the other side of Azeroth, meaning that its roots are still out there. I mean, the Titans clearly did not want us to find that. And in the time rifts that we ventured into in patch 10.1.5, we go to Uldaroth, which is supposed to be this vision of Azeroth, right? This other timeline where the Titans reign supreme. Yet, what do we see? We see that the Titans have been thoroughly thwacked by life. So, just like an abandoned city in a post-apocalyptic scenario being reclaimed by nature, essentially that's what could happen to Azeroth. I have to wonder then if that Uldaroth vision from the Time Rifts is the natural consequence of whatever's going on the other side of the world getting out of hand. And of course, that tree, Elune here, is connected to Elune. Are we seriously going to go against Elune because Aman'Thul and his manservant Odin don't think it's the best thing for Azeroth because they want a finely trimmed garden where really no life actually lives? And that brings me to Tyr and Odin. These guys had a friendly rivalry during the Ordering of Azeroth, right? Just trying to kill old god things and one-up each other. They fought Ragnaros together. They basically competed for the title of the greatest warrior of the Titan Keepers. Now, Odin was made Prime Designate. He became the ruler of the world. And within those tomes we recovered from Ultiman, we see that whenever mortals first started to appear in the world, he, okay, thankfully didn't decide to kill them all, but did publish hundreds of edicts telling his servants to, exactly what to do, right? Tell a sanitized version of history, control their growth, yada, yada, yada. And of course, that's a version of history where Avalorn does not exist, where Kalimdor, which of course was then blown into multi-continents, where Kalimdor was the original only landmass on the planet, where there is no connection between Elune and Aenar, where, the life isn't that important, where mortals will basically remain ignorant and useful. But Tyr, of course, loved the life of the planet. He loved the mortals. Even in the face of Tyr's objections, he uplifted the dragonflights. And that, of course, is what caused Odin's greatest rage, literally leaving the ground of the world to build his army of Valajar as the true guardians of Azeroth. Of course, the joke was on him because he was a real dickhead to Helya, and to get some revenge, she pretty much locked him up there for a very long time indeed. But that does mean there's almost surely some bad blood. So when Tyr is reforged, of course, able to meet his newly reformed Tyr's Guard, which we have, of course, helped train up in the game in patch 10.1.7, I think Tyr will obviously side with the aspects and with us. And perhaps initially he'll be happy to meet Odin again and catch up and see what the state of affairs is, but what happens then when we go to that other side of Azeroth, where we perhaps see life there? If that happens, who will Tyr choose? The answer is, I'm fairly sure it's us. And really, it's those choices that are the point of this video. There is a lot of natural tension, and it's all leading to one big thing: Iridikron. If Iridikron comes good on his promise to force the Titans back to Azeroth, when they do, that's probably where a bunch of things will happen, including Void launching its gambit to take the world, which obviously is why Xal'atath would want to work with Iridikron. And Iridikron is probably happy to let that happen because, at the end of the day, the thing that he cares about is winning his war. He doesn't really care about any of the loftier issues here. He just wants to defeat the Titans and essentially get revenge for all the things that were done to him. I think it's pretty clear that Blizzard are setting up something rather big. Now, as I recently talked about on the channel, one of Chris Metzen's jobs, as he now returns to Blizzard Entertainment, is specifically on World of Warcraft to chart the multi-year, multi-expansion plot, right? And what we have as we go into that is quite a lot about Elune, about the Titans. We have some potential even set up with Demonkind. These are all the things that are in Metzen's box, so as people who play this game, who perhaps want to know what's going to happen next, who want to speculate or theorize, we just have to think, these are the plot threads that Chris Metzen has. How will he decide to draw them together? That's the question. Let me know how you think it will happen in those comments down below. So thanks to War Thunder for supporting today's video. Blowing shit up is damn fun. Do it in War Thunder today by clicking my link down below, where you'll get a massive bonus pack with 100,000 silver lions, a 50% booster for XP and silver, 7 days of premium and rentals for the M4A2 Sherman and P40E-1, and 10 backups for each, all to help you launch into that action quickly. The offer's up for a limited time, so grab it while you can, and a big thank you to them for sponsoring today's video. With that, I'll see you next time.